Welcome to the fourth section of the story. I want to address a couple things real quick, simple things. So I'm going to continue doing the sectioned short format for each title. And I did, if you saw the short, I did upgrade the sound. So hopefully if you're wearing headphones, you can hear the sound in both ears now. And I've been getting a little bit of feedback, and so I'll address another thing here real quick. This story, to preface what we're going to talk about in this story, this is a storyteller mode story, so there's characters like behaving as the story, but they're also telling a story, which is it's going to sound like two concurrent plots at the same time, because it's a family interacting with each other, doing things, and they're telling a story, which is also the main part of the story. So hopefully that makes sense. So let's just get into it. The tragedy that befell planet Babylon. The Weasel family were all together in their den in the hollow of an old tree in a region named Pub on the Island located on Foundry Planet. The 5 weasels, mother, father, and 3 young boys, were eating dinner of the freshly hunted goose that their father had dragged home, as well as several stray orange and burnt umber colored leaves. Mother and father helped their young pups, Stink, Stank, and Stunk Weasel, to avoid feathers and bones and get plenty of big bites of the rich oily meat that would help them grow into big and strong like their father. "Boys," said Pinky, their mother, "don't scatter the feathers. This is a den, not a pigsty." "Yes, Ma," answered all 3 boys in unison with tiny greasy smiles. Flint, the boy's father, guided his wife's chin to his face with his paw, gave her a quick peck on the face, after which he said, "I'll help them clean up." "You know that's not what I meant," said Pinky as she chittered and sighed at Flint. "I know," said Flint, swallowing some more goose meat. "I was just overcome by your cuteness, my dear." Suddenly, in 3 different tones, each pup burped their very own loud belch, after which they all clapped their tiny paws. Pinky shot a glance at Flint, who cleared his throat and declared, Now, boys, like this." Flint's burp was so loud it reverberated around inside the hollow tree. "Barbarians," said Pinky firmly. The Weasel family shared a wholesome belly laugh, followed by some more goose meat and a raspberry tart for each of them, made with sweet oats baked into the crust. After their meal, and after the goose bones had been relocated to fortify the side entrance of their den, and after the feathers had been distributed to the drafty edges and secured in place, all the weasels settled in. Stink, Stank, and Stunk were all on their hind legs, sniffing the air, with all 6 buckshot eyes twinkling. The young boys had discovered a proclivity with their mother and father, their shared exuberance for telling stories, especially family stories, and especially when the air had that extra crisp bite, just like tonight. The boys loved all the family stories about the exploits and adventures of the weasels that had come before them, but mostly the boys loved staying up past moonrise. All 3 boys started rhythmically clapping their tiny paws. Flint and Pinky gave each other fierce glances, as they knew what their boys were up to as they chittered at each other. Then Flint and Pinky began clapping, matching the boys' cadence. The 3 young weasels began their 2-syllable chant in time with their clapping. "Story, story, story." Flint and Pinky joined in, also chanting, "Story, story." This silliness carried on until all 3 boys' tiny paws grew tired. Yet before it was fully silent, Pinky erupted in gratitude, saying, "Oh, boys, do you want to tell your father and I a story? How wonderful! We love stories." Stink, Stank, and Stunk fell to the floor of the den, laughing, and Flint used this opportunity to steal another smooch from his sly wife. Pinky swished her tail vigorously. Though lingering panting and chuckles, the tiny weasel said, "No, you tell us a story." "Oh, I see. Silly us," said Flint, wearing a full-mouth grin. "What story do you want to hear?" asked Pinky. Feeling very mischievous, the boys all sounded out together, "Gray, gray, 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 Papa!" Flint and Pinky looked at each other as they were speaking without using words, knowing the sheer length of this particular story would require an intermission and another raspberry tart with sweet oats baked in the crust for each of them later. "That story is so very terribly long, boys," said Flint. "Please!" the young pups cried. Then, as a seamless force, Pinky and Flint began the tale of the boys' great-great-great-great-grandfather, Think Weasel. Flint began with his own two brothers, Tint and Lint, and Pinky began with her two sisters, Blinky and Winky, and described how weasels were always born in triplets since the beginning of time. As far as tonight's story is concerned, however, it only needs to go back 5 generations. As Flint and Pinky followed the family trees in reverse, they arrived at the most infamous weasel brothers so far in history, who were named Think, Thank, Thunk, and the rhyme namesakes were now listening to their tale. Pinky was the direct descendant of Think Weasel, who had gained a reputation for himself and his two brothers as ruthless and cutthroat space pirates. The job that secured them this generational good fortune contract with employment was the serendipitous Babylon contract. The Babylon contract was a wager with the director of the Foundry Inc. and the Weasels, designed to be an impossible task. The terms of this wager were either permanent exile or lifelong employment with the Foundry with access to corporate resources, protections, and legal immunities. Think, Thank, and Thunk viewed this as a challenge, a blessing, and an opportunity. Up to this point, the brothers had been marauding and hijacking trade ships across the galaxy. However, this was not a productive means of theft. It was also very tiring on each other's nerves, since they kept finding the captain's log stuck and jammed in the latrine. No matter the wild job description, the brothers were willing to take the risks for themselves and for their next of kin. Separately, in his office, the director of Foundry Incorporated sat at his opulent but necessary office with a cup filled with number 2 pencils and a solid triangular-edged nameplate that read, Crispin Llewellyn Chandler, Director, CEO. The director decided to call his front desk secretary, so he pressed a button on the desk phone and waited. "Yes, sir," came over the speaker. "Ophelia, who were those 3 Beagle gents that I bet on with the Babylon contract?" "They are weasels, sir." "They are? Oh dear, this is hot water. Shall I call the girls for you?" "No, Ophelia, I can manage, thank you." The director rapidly jammed several buttons on the desk phone, waited, and presently 2 smoky fox voices ran through all at once. "Yeah, boss?" "Dahlia, Giselle, I have a situation. I'll be in your office shortly." "Coffee will be ready, boss." Let's take a little break.